Okay, I will take a moment now to introduce our next speaker. But before I do, I'm just going to note, many of you may have noted a change in the lineup of speakers in our program today. Giga Metafashishvili of Mountain Resort Solutions based in Georgia could not be with us today due to some personal circumstances. We would like to say thank you to him for his time in preparing for our conference and wish him all the best. We hope to see his presentation at another time in the future. But with the last minute adjustments of our program, we would like to say thank you to Jerry Johnson for stepping up to present on very short notice. Jerry is a professor in political science at Montana State University. He has a specialty in public lands policy. He's a part-time fly fishing guide also in Alaska and a happy grandfather of 3. Jerry will be presenting today on rethinking the heuristic traps paradigm in avalanche education. As we know, a lot of these subjects and research that discusses heuristics and the traps affiliated with them, they're fundamental for our awareness and monitoring factors that influence our decision making every day. And so it's with great interest and curiosity that I introduce Jerry Johnson.
Thank you. Got me?
Got your mic, and we're just waiting for the presentation.
All right. And you've got my presentation up?
Not yet.
Okay.
You're good to go, Jerry.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I do apologize in advance. This is a little rough. I got this call on Friday and got back to a computer this morning. So this has been a bit of a rush, but we did just recently publish this paper. I have up there the my co-authors on this and affiliations, and I want to thank them for all the hard work. This paper's only been out about a month. It's a lot of fun to write because it did give us a chance to revisit the heuristics or the heuristic traps, or what I'm going to refer to as basically the facets paradigm. And I don't think that needs much introduction to this group. This is work that was done by Ian McCammon in the early 2000s. Little over 700 accident reports that he pulled together and tried to look at some patterns and look at the failures of the decision shortcuts or these heuristics. And just as kind of a review, you'll remember that these of the different ways of thinking about making decisions, heuristics is one of them. It's a way to reduce the cost of making a decision. It pulls on our knowledge, skills, and abilities, but it also pulls on the limitations of our time and expertise. And most of the time, these shortcuts work very, very well until they don't. And that's what I think McCammon was trying to understand. Let me be clear what we're saying in this paper. The heuristics or the facets paradigm has a lot of it makes a lot of intuitive sense. McCammon in his original papers, which we should all go back and read once in a while, is very clear about what he's saying and what he's not saying. He's not explaining all avalanche accidents. He's not explaining all of our decisions in the backcountry. He is looking at fundamental failures of decision in the very, very few cases of fatal accidents. And that gets lost. And I think one of the reasons for writing this paper and rethinking this idea was that it has not only been lost, but it's been a bit misunderstood or misappropriated within our I'm hearing somebody else.
Sorry, Jerry. We had
Okay.
that pusher.
Okay. Here's the problem. There's a lot of weaknesses in both the approach to studying accidents and in the way the facets, the study of facets is kind of unfolded. All right. And so as I said, we are misapplying some of what McCammon is trying to teach us. But we also have a very poor understanding of the facets themselves. So here's just a couple of examples. One is what we can call the sample bias. Accidents happen to a very, very small number of us in the backcountry. It's not a sample in terms of what we would like to do in terms of scientific sampling, probability sampling. These are what's called convenience samples. And in the case of accidents, they're a very narrow group, even within that convenience sample. So to take the lessons from accidents and try to generalize them to the larger population and our general decision-making in our decision-making processes in general is just bad science. It's not going to result in good findings and good avalanche education. Another example, and the full list of what I'm talking about here is in our paper, and we do have a poster that's up now. The accidents are compressed over time. So this body of accidents that he was looking at was about a 30-year time period, all in the United States. So you might reasonably ask, what has changed over that 30 years? Well, not only has the number of people in the backcountry that are practicing these sports increased, but the technology has changed. The education has changed. All sorts of things have changed. And the analysis of looking at the entire body of accidents doesn't take that into account. It can't take that into account because we're treating them all alike. My personal opinion is that the nature of accidents has changed from just in fundamental causes, positions of ignorance or lack of education, lack of information, to what I call accidents of choice, where in spite of what we know is going on in the snowpack, in spite of what we know is going on in the weather, some people choose to ski that slope anyway. That is not based on ignorance, that's based on choice. So in order to really do a better job of understanding the nature and causes of these accidents, we really need to break accidents into various segments, or what you can think of as ensembles of accidents. And so in the paper we discuss that, and we discuss some of the ways that we might look at that. The third one is a little bit more problematic to me and really goes to the heart of what I want to leave you with today. And that is, what are these facets? Sorry, I do have their convenience sample, and I think we've talked about that. If we're going to do good science, we have to have a good handle on our variables. In social science in particular, we call that operationalizing our variables. What is it exactly we're trying to measure? So one of the heuristic traps that we're all familiar with is this familiarity trap. Our past actions guide our behavior in a familiar setting. Well, I don't know what familiar means in that statement. Do I have to visit a slope a certain number of times in order to be familiar with it? What is familiar with it? Is it the underlying terrain under the snowpack? Is it the snowpack conditions? Is it the weather pattern? It's clearly all those things. Who's familiar? We often conflate the individual within a group and that charismatic individual that he talks about, and the group decision. In fact, there's no such thing as a group decision. There's individuals that make up that group, but each of them come to a decision on their own terms, and then perhaps they discuss that. So I'm a little bit concerned when we talk about familiarity that we don't really have a good definition of it. And here I just have a short list of how we might think about familiar. Is it a slope, a run, a region, a peak, a drainage? Is it time on slope, numbers of time on slope? When were we on the slope? Is it the attributes of the slope? In this case, is it something that's easily accessible? Is it out there in the social media? Is it in a guidebook? What's our experience with that slope? In other words, we can ski that slope multiple times, but do we have different experiences with different people or different events on that slope? Is it the last time we visited, or the next time we visited, or the last storm cycle? So it can be a function of many things. And the reason I bring this out is because each of the definitions, each of the terms in the heuristics that are discussed are very, very poorly defined. And if we're going to do good social science, we need to have good definitions. And we don't. So what do? One of the really cool things about this ISSW group, and unique in the other areas that I've worked in my career, is that there's a lot of citizen science. There's a lot of people out in the field doing some really good questions and some really good projects. And you see them in the posters and the papers at ISSWs. It's not perfect. So what can we do to help move this process along, to get a better understanding of the heuristics, the heuristic traps, the facets paradigm, to operationalize these and to move what I think is sort of a stuck paradigm forward? What we're doing at the MSU Snow and Avalanche Lab is we're launching a human factors research page. And so what I'm doing currently is building a set of web pages that help citizen scientists in the ISSW world move from idea, conceptualization, to research question, to literature review, sampling, surveys, and analysis. The bias is on surveys. That's in part what I do. That seems to be what a lot of people want to do. So that's where the emphasis is being placed. All of the examples are using examples from past ISSW papers. So as we immerse ourselves in this project, the examples that we're drawing on are examples of our peers, our citizen science peers. Another feature of this that I think will help move the operationalization of these variables along is we're going to have a question bank. This question bank is obviously voluntary. We can't compel anyone to use questions or our methods, but we can put it out there to help people so that we don't have to continually reinvent the wheel. So if you think about standard demographic questions or practitioner questions, there's multiple ways of looking at experience, at abilities, at education. And what we're going to do is we're going to present several ways of doing that so that you can pick and choose among it from that question bank to build your survey. This is meant to be a collaborative process. This is meant to be open. We haven't quite got the details of that worked out, but the idea is that as people do more surveys, we can upload those. As they have successes, we can build on those. As they have problems, maybe we can take a look at those. The idea is to simply help people who want to move the human factors research forward and do that in a fairly logical and low cost way. So here's where we're going with this. The facets paradigm has encouraged us to, it's framed our language. And it's framed this language around failure, when in fact, you heard from Jordi this morning, our tracks indicate that most people don't fail. Most people are not having avalanche accidents. So why are we not shifting that paradigm towards in another direction? All right. I think that it is holding us back in terms of productive research. We need to define these terms. We need to define what an expert is, what a familiarity is. These various facets are simply too vague to be useful to do good science-based avalanche education. And so what we're hoping is by launching this human factors research page, by launching the question bank, that we can get more collaborative, a more collaborative working relationship with people around the world who are interested in these questions. If we can start to use some of the similar metrics, we can start to do some meta-analysis, because we can never do good scientific sampling of the backcountry ski and snowmobiling community. But by working together around a framework such as this, maybe we can make some progress and produce some more science-based avalanche education. Thank you.
There I go. Okay. Apologies for that. My microphone was a bit sticky. Thanks very much for that, Jerry. Again, we will put it out to you now if anyone has questions. Our preferred method is, again, use your hand up function. You'll be added into the queue, and our technician can connect you with our speaker. Brent, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question from the floor from Pascal Hagley, please. Go ahead, Pascal.
Hi, Jerry. It's Pascal here.
Hey,
from
Pascal, how you doing?
University. Good. I wanted to ask you, like on one side, I think I'm totally on board with you that I think it's important to sort of bring up the quality of surveys that we do. My concern is a little bit that the heuristic traps, these are really sort of emotional responses that are very much context dependent. And I wonder whether surveys are the right tools to study those kind of events. Like, to me, it seems like people will never sort of respond the same way when you ask them, either in an intercept survey or in an online survey. Do you have any thoughts around sort of those types of challenges, and whether there will be other tools that are used in the social sciences that might be more suitable to research these kind of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. My personal feeling is that, that they're probably not the right tools, but surveys are accessible to citizen scientists. We can do a survey on a simple question, and someone can be successful and produce a successful project driven by their data needs. So something at work, something that they see while they're teaching education classes or something like that. Personally, I think moving away from the heuristics traps is probably going in the long run going to be more productive than staying stuck in that paradigm. You've done some work in this area. We've done some work in this area. This is clearly not a failure of decisions per se. It's an emotional, as you say, it's an emotional trap. And controlling our emotions, or learning how to control our emotions, is not going to be done on a survey. But this is a place to start. We all know that doing more qualitative work maybe gives us a richer understanding, but it's really, really hard to do. There's very few of us that are very good at it. And so I wanted to start small, wanted to start simple, looking at the literature in the ISSW papers, there's a lot of surveys. Many of them, mine included, can use improvement. So this was a place to start. Hopefully over some next period of time, other methods will be added to this, and we can move the research agenda forward.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight to the audience here that social sciences are much more than just surveys, and that it's really key to basically find the right tool for those questions. And I think some of these questions that we have about these sort of emotionally charged decisions and when they happen and under what circumstances, those are some really challenging research questions. And picking the right tool to address this is going to be key to make a big difference. So I just want to make sure everybody sort of understands that.
No,
but thank you for your efforts.
Yep.
Thanks for the question. Do we have others?
Yes, we have actually one question from the chat box that just so we can get that answered from you, Jerry, is the acronym FACETS. What does that stand for? We have a couple people asking that.
Google is your friend. In the process of losing, I'm sure Pascal probably has this off the top of his head. I don't. In the process of losing my webcam today, I also lost my notes page. So go Googleize FACETS, do some reading, bring yourself up to speed.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry. And
so how's that for a cop-out? Pretty good.
No, that's great. We've actually posted a web link to the human factors FACETS in the chat box for you folks. We also have another question from the floor from Wolfgang Baer. If he would like to ask his question, go ahead, Wolfgang.
Hi, Jerry. It's Wolfgang from Munich. I have a question. The accidents of choice. My feeling is you're right. Is there any research? Is there any evidence, empirical evidence of that has changed?
Well, I think if you qualitatively, if you read accident reports from, let's just say 10 years ago to more contemporary, it seems as though, and let me just say this, I hope someday someone will do the work that McCammon did in assimilating and compiling that huge accident database and analyzing it. I can only say that looking at it, you know, in a qualitative way, the stories of these tragedies seem to be different. They're not stories of ignorance. They're stories where people said, for whatever reason, social cues, showing off, media coverage, Twitter hits, they made a choice to do something that they probably knew was not wise. I'm only basing that on reading them.
Okay.
And I wish someone would go in and test that hypothesis.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Any other questions, Brent?
We have no more questions from the floor.
Okay. I've got a note here just in the chat box from Rupert saying forecasting a continuum of environmental threats, FACETS in the audience. All right, well, with that, thank you very much, Jerry. We are 23 minutes after the hour. So what we're going to do is take a very short break. We'll just have a fill-in slide here. Everyone can refresh their coffees or get a water or whatever you else need to do. And we will reconvene with our next speaker at, I think we will be 1:30, is that correct? Okay, very good. So we will see you then. Enjoy your break. Thanks for tuning in.